My name is Captain Serena Sutton. The day my country decided to call me a hero, my family decided to call me a mistake. The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes was colder than I imagined. High ceilings, white lights, a sea of uniforms like an ocean of steel. When they called my name, the room rose to its feet. Captain Serena Sutton. Applause slammed into me like a wave, hands clapping, medals rattling, boots scraping. Somewhere, a band played a polished version of patriotism. In the front row, my family didn't move. My mother sat straight, backed, fingers strangling the strap of her purse. My younger brother Noah hunched over his phone, thumbs flicking. And my father, Harold Sutton, leaned back, arms crossed, lips curled in that same smirk I'd seen since childhood. You can hear a lot even through one good ear. You can hear what's not happening. No cheers from them. No proud tears. No, that's my girl. Just silence from the people I bled to protect. I walked toward the stage. Each step echoed off the marble clack. 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 A countdown to a truth I didn't know was coming. The general took the microphone. Today, we honor Captain Serena Sutton for wounds sustained in combat and for exemplary courage. My father's voice cut through the hall like a knife. Tell them the rest, he shouted. Tell them you caused it. The entire room went still. Applause died mid-clap. Heads turned. Cameras shifted, hungry. The general's jaw tightened. My mother grabbed my father's sleeve, whispering his name, but he shook her off like she was an annoyance. I stopped mid-step, the spotlight burning my face. My father's eyes locked on mine, and in front of generals, soldiers, reporters, and strangers, my own blood tried to strip me of the one thing I had left: my honor. That was the moment I realized something brutal. War had never betrayed me as deeply as my own last name was about to. FLAHBCKT blast. 3 years earlier, war looked nothing like this polished hall. I was stationed at an airbase on the edge of the Horn of Africa, a place where the wind tasted like salt and jet fuel, and the horizon was just heat and haze. My job sounded simple on paper. I was an aircraft systems officer, in charge of final safety inspections on our tactical recon jets. In reality, every check was a loaded question. Did that fuel reading mean ready for launch? Or ready to become a fireball with a pilot inside? I lived inside spreadsheets and diagnostics. Numbers were cleaner than people. They didn't lie, unless someone told them to. 1 week in June, the numbers started lying. Fuel levels that didn't match tank weight, pressure readings that corrected themselves as soon as I refreshed the screen. Small glitches here and there. Small glitches kill people. The common thread. A contractor, Ardent Dynamics, the private company supplying and servicing our fuel management software. I filed a priority report up the chain. Flagged it as urgent. Attached screenshots, test logs, my full analysis. The system auto-confirmed receipt. And then nothing, no call, no meeting, no follow-up. Just a quiet, official void. 3 days later, the hangar turned into a sun. I remember the moment like it isn't a memory, but a scar replaying itself, the overhead lights humming, the metallic tang in the air. I was leaning over a console, verifying a test run, when the world snapped white. The sound didn't register at first, just a crushing pressure, like the sky collapsed onto my chest. Metal screamed. Something hot and sharp tore into my shoulder. I tasted blood and burning plastic. When I woke up in the hospital, my right ear heard machines beeping. My left ear heard nothing, silence that followed me like a shadow. Lucky to be alive, the doctor said. I stared at the ceiling and thought if this was luck. I wondered what a curse felt like. Farce Karafik, they called it a system malfunction, no sabotage, no negligence. Just a tragic error in complex machinery. That's what the official report said. Soldiers died, others burned. I got a Purple Heart and a permanent reminder that silence can be louder than explosions. A few weeks into rehab, my mother called. Good news, she said, her voice too bright. Your father finally caught a break. An engineering firm hired his company for some consulting work. Enough to clear the mortgage. What firm? I asked. She hesitated. Ardent something. Ardent Dynamics, I think. The room tilted. Ardent Dynamics. The same company I'd reported. The company tied to the software I believed had failed, and possibly been altered. Before my explosion. My shoulder throbbed where they dug out shrapnel. My stitched skin itched under its gauze. I pressed the phone tighter to my good ear, hoping I'd misheard. "You sure?" I asked. "Yes, honey," she said. "Isn't that wonderful?" I didn't answer. Sometimes the people cashing the checks are the same people cashing in on your blood. I told myself I was paranoid. Trauma plays tricks. Conspiracies bloom in hospital rooms where the only view is a parking lot. But a soldier's gut doesn't forget, it just waits. Tichi eintapaun months passed. I relearned balance, relearned how to sleep through phantom alarms, relearned how to live with half the sounds I used to hear. Then came the letter. Captain Serena Sutton, you are hereby invited to receive the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross. My hands shook as I read. My father had never congratulated me on any promotion. My mother had always treated my deployments like inconvenient vacations. Maybe this ceremony would be something. A turning point. Recognition. Closure. I called home out of habit. Dad answered. So they're pinning a medal on the accident now. A mom's voice slipped in, anxious and soft. We're proud of you, sweetie. From somewhere behind them, Noah called out, chuckling. Wes blowing things up finally paid off. Ha, sis. I stared at the wall. The same wall I'd once taped their photos on before every deployment. When I hung up, the apartment felt tighter. Smaller. Like the air knew something I didn't. 2 days later, the official ceremony packet arrived. Inside, under the typed signatures and seals, was one short handwritten line. Captain Sutton. The country owes you more than a medal. The truth needs witnesses. G. Marshall. General Graham Marshall. Former head of the Defense Integrity Division. The man I'd sent my original Ardent Dynamics report to. Before the blast. He'd retired abruptly after the explosion. Disappeared from the news. Rumors said he'd been pushed out. Now he was calling me to stand under the brightest lights in the Pentagon. The medal suddenly didn't matter. Whatever he knew, whatever he was about to say, it wasn't the kind of truth they put in recruiting posters. BCK, TUTHE Heil, OAF, Heros. So there I was, standing in the Hall of Heroes. Every eye on me, my father's accusation still hanging in the air. Tell them you caused it. The general didn't flinch. He turned from my father to the crowd, voice calm, cold, and amplified. Courage, General Marshall said, isn't just facing enemy fire. Sometimes it's standing in a room where your own family would rather see you fall than see the truth rise. Whispers rippled through the audience. My father glared, red creeping up his neck. You don't get to talk about my family. A marshal raised a hand. Mr. Sutton, you'll have time to speak, under oath. He opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a stack of documents. This Purple Heart honors Captain Sutton's sacrifice. But today, we honor something else as well. The truth she tried to protect, and the people who tried to bury it. He read slowly, each word dropping like a hammer. An internal audit of Ardent Dynamics and associated accounts has confirmed that, 12 days before the hangar explosion, payments totaling $485,000 were wired to accounts controlled by Harold Sutton and Sons Contracting and Noah Sutton. A collective gasp swept the hall. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. Noah went pale. Marshall went on. These payments came directly from Ardent Dynamics, the same company Captain Sutton reported for falsifying aircraft safety data before the incident. Additionally, classified diagnostic reports filed by Captain Sutton were accessed from an external IP address in Wilmington, North Carolina, using her stolen credentials. My hometown. My parents' house. A cold numbness climbed my spine. My father lurched to his feet. That's a damn lie. Marshall didn't blink. Sit down, sir. You will respond in federal court, not in this hall. My father's gaze burned into me. You think you're saving this country, he shouted. You just sold out your own blood. I didn't speak, didn't move. I just stood there as my world split neatly into before and after. Behind me, someone in uniform began to clap. One slow, steady clap, then another. Then more, until the room rose again. They weren't applauding an explosion. They were applauding someone still standing after the kind of betrayal that doesn't leave visible scars. THEVIDNC after the ceremony, they led me into a secure room. The applause died with the shutting door. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. General Marshall came in alone. He looked older up close, like the last few years had carved more into him than time should. He slid a small encrypted drive across the table. "Check your Wilmington access logs," he said quietly. "Home network. Shared devices." Then he walked out, leaving me with the weight of a simple sentence. That night, in my hotel room, I decrypted the files. On screen, lines of access logs scrolled past. Dates, times, user IDs. Then one line stopped me cold. Username Sutton, source home, PC Wilmington, file accessed. Secured, reports fuel diag Serena. Sutton, date 10 days before explosion. Noah.
My brother.
My stomach dropped. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, voice raw. "Serena, they raided the house. They took your father's files. Noah's laptop. They're saying terrible things." "Who gave Ardent my report, Mom?" I asked. Silence. I signed some papers." She whispered. "They said it was consulting. For your father's business. For Noah's startup. They said it would help the troops. That it was harmless." "Harmless?" I repeated. "You signed for almost $500,000 from the same company I was investigating." She started to sob. "We thought it was just data." "You're so smart with all that technical stuff," your father said. I hung up. The ringing in my damaged ear returned, louder than ever. This time, it wasn't from an explosion. It was from knowing. The coordinates for the blast that nearly killed me had been drawn, in part, by the people whose photos I'd carried into every deployment. Face-eyeing below, investigations move slowly in public, but behind closed doors they can roar. Financial records, email trails, contracts labeled, community outreach, and technical advisory that were nothing more than bribes with patriotic names. One afternoon, Marshall showed up at my apartment with a new folder. "Ardent wired the money to your father's company," he said. "But the signature authorizing the transfer, it's your mother's." I stared at the page. At the familiar slant of her handwriting, neat and careful, at the bottom of a document that might as well have been my death warrant. "She knew?" I asked. "She knew it was classified material," he said. "Maybe she didn't know where it would end. But she knew it wasn't legal. She signed anyway." Grief doesn't always feel like crying. Sometimes it feels like your chest has been hollowed out and replaced with ice. They let me see Noah once, at a federal processing center. He looked smaller behind glass, the swagger gone. "You shouldn't have come," he muttered. "I need to hear you say it," I replied. "Why?" He stared at his hands. "They said it was just numbers. Data, that you'd already okayed it, that it was for safety calibration. Dad said we couldn't miss the chance, that you'd understand." "You sold my report," I said slowly. "The one that pointed straight at Ardent's lies. You handed them the evidence they needed to cover their tracks." His eyes filled. "I didn't know it would lead to. That's the problem." I cut in. "Nobody ever thinks it leads to bodies. Until it does." I left before he could answer. On my way out, the metal door clicked shut behind me with a finality that felt like a funeral. At Tirial 3 months later, at Fort Bragg, the truth stepped into daylight. Reporters lined the entrance. Headlines screamed about the soldier who turned on her family and defense contractor bribery scandal. Inside the courtroom, the air smelled like paper and nerves. I wore my dress uniform, same ribbon stack, same Purple Heart. This time, I chose it. Not for them. For me. On the defense side sat my father, my mother, and my brother. My father tried to look defiant. My mother looked like she'd aged 20 years. Noah stared at the floor. The prosecution laid the story out like a map, bank records showing Ardent's wired payments. My mother's signature on consulting agreements. Access logs from our home computer. Forensic proof that my diagnostic report was copied and routed through my brother's account. Security footage from the base, an Ardent technician entering the restricted fuel bay with a forged contractor badge, issued under Harold Sutton Contracting. When the video played, my father's jaw clenched so hard I could hear the grind in my good ear. The prosecutor turned to the judge. This badge would not exist without Mr. Sutton's authorization. My father finally took the stand. "We did what we had to do," he said, voice steady but hoarse. "Business was dying. They promised it was safe. They promised it would help. Our family has blood for this country. We just wanted a piece of what she was getting. What I was getting. I repeated under my breath. Concussions. Scar tissue. Nightmares. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand and sat. Did you come here to punish your family? The defense attorney asked. I shook my head. I came here because pilots died. Mechanics burned. A hangar turned into a crater. And the people who profited from that called it consulting. I looked straight at my father. Loyalty doesn't mean covering up the bodies your choices create. It doesn't mean selling classified data and telling yourself the explosion was just bad luck. Loyalty to your family can't come before loyalty to the lives you put in danger. The courtroom was silent. In the back row, a young private wiped her eyes. The judge's verdict was clear: guilty, on fraud, on conspiracy, on violations of national security law. As marshals moved to escort my family out, my father twisted around to glare at me one last time. You're no hero, he spat. Heroes protect their own. I stood up. That's exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm protecting the ones you never even saw. After the news cycle burned hot for a few weeks, then moved on like it always does. Ardent dynamics folded under the weight of lawsuits and criminal charges. Executives traded tailored suits for prison uniforms. My father and brother went to federal prison. My mother took a plea and moved to a relative's house down south, trading our family home for a smaller life and a long list of regrets. People messaged me online, calling me brave, calling me a traitor, calling me every name in between. I didn't feel like any of those things. I felt like someone picking through rubble after an explosion, trying to decide what was worth saving. The Department of Defense offered me a new role: ethics and compliance advisor for defense contracting. My job would be to make sure no one else could sell out safety the way my family had. I said yes. I moved into a small cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where the air smelled like pine and rain, not jet fuel and burnt metal. The silence there didn't press on my ears. It gave them rest. On the first night, I unpacked my medals. I held the Purple Heart in my palm. For years, it had felt like proof of pain, a pretty shape for ugly memories. Under the soft cabin light, it looked different. Not like a prize. Not like a wound. More like a promise. Not that I'd never be hurt again, but that I'd never let anyone turn my silence into their profit. I hung it on the wall. For the first time, it didn't feel like it belonged to the army. It felt like it belonged to me. 5 years later, 5 years later, I walked onto another stage in Washington, D.C., not to be decorated, but to speak. Defense Whistleblower Protection Summit. The room was filled with uniforms and suits. Young officers, civilian analysts, contract workers, people who had seen too much and said too little, or said too much and paid for it. The host introduced me, Captain Serena Sutton, recipient of the Purple Heart, survivor of the East Ridge hangar explosion, and lead ethics advisor on defense contracting integrity. The applause was warm, not thunderous. Respectful, measured, real. I stepped up to the podium. The Purple Heart rested just over my heart, its ribbon faded, its edges worn from being handled. I took a breath. The first time I stood under lights like these. I began. I thought a medal would fix everything. I scanned the room. I saw faces tense with recognition. I thought if I could just prove I was brave enough, hurt enough, worthy enough, my family would finally stand up for me. They didn't. Instead, I watched my father try to turn a ceremony into my trial. Silence. No one fidgeted. No one coughed. Courage, I said slowly. Who's taking a bullet in a textbook war? Sometimes, courage is what you do when the shot comes from your own dinner table. When the betrayal has your last name on it. A few heads lowered. A few eyes glistened. I get asked a lot why I didn't just stay quiet. I continued. Why I didn't protect my family. Even after what they did. I thought of my niece. The letter she'd sent 2 years ago. Aunt Serena, Dad's in prison now. Mom says you turned him in. I just want to know, why didn't you give up? I didn't stay quiet. I told the room, because silence is a weapon. It's just slower than a bomb. It kills reputations first, then truth, then people. One falsified report at a time. One bribe at a time. One harmless shortcut at a time, I rested a hand lightly on the metal. This, I said, is not about glorifying wounds. It's about surviving what comes after, and still choosing to serve. Not a company, not a name, not a paycheck, but the people who climb into aircraft trusting that the data is clean, and the people behind it chose integrity over profit. I let the words sit. If you're here, because you've seen something wrong. I finished softly. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It's not. You might lose people you thought were yours forever, but I can promise you this, the cost of telling the truth is high. The cost of burying it is higher. The audience rose. Applause swelled, steady, grounded. Nothing like the hollow roar from years ago. When I stepped outside, the sky was streaked in gold and deep violet. For a moment, it matched the ribbon on my chest. I touched the metal and whispered, not to the crowd, not to the cameras, but to the younger version of myself who once thought silence was safer. Purple. The color of pain and of peace you earn. Then I walked forward. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's sister, but as Captain Serena Sutton, the soldier who lived through an explosion, lost her family, and chose the truth anyway.